Mark. As John said, I work at Qubit at the moment, so because my interest in this area is that we use the Google kind of platform for a lot of development work we do. We're a startup in Covent Garden in London. And so Google Cloud Dataprep, which is what I talk about, is also part of that kind of stack there. So we talk about that, but actually not so much in the kind of Qubit sense, but actually where I've been using it for my own data. And it's been quite an interesting example of, I suppose, blending lots of different data sources and doing something interesting in your own time to learn the product, really. Okay, so hopefully this will stop doing that spinning ball for a second. I can kind of show you what's going on here. So it's kind of down there. So first of all, how many of you, so you none of you use Trifacta at the moment or Cloud Dataprep, but how many of you work with the Google platform at the moment? So BigQuery and that sort of thing. So BigQuery, Cloud Data Flow and that sort of thing. So that's actually what we've been using mostly at Qubit, and actually this is a fairly new thing for us. But it fills a kind of nice gap where we have kind of maybe a client with some bespoke data or kind of more data preppy kind of piece of work really. So I'll explain a bit of that later on as we go on. Hopefully this is going to actually stop spinning there. Let's close that down. Okay. It's normally Chrome that takes up all the memory, so this time it's this one here. Hang on a second.
The demo gods are never happy.
No, it's all your. You know what it is? It's Zoom. It's taking all the memory out. If you look on the activity monitor, it's actually Zoom that's taking up all the memory. So there we go. Hopefully it'll start now. If not, I've got the keynotes on. I've got the. Come on.
No, that's not going to work. I can.
No, hang on. It's just God knows what's taking that thing there. Okay, I've got it as a PDF as well. So work. Ah, there we go. No, that's the. Oh, it's definitely keynote, isn't it? I would have thought. Right, okay. Come on. Yeah. Okay. So for some reason it's just doing that thing there. Okay. I think we can do this. Okay. So let me just introduce myself first of all. So I work as a PM at Qubit. My background before that is I was a consultant. I was a CTO in a consultancy. Actually, mainly working with things like horrible technology at that point. So I actually work as a PM now. I'm responsible for an analytics product that runs on top of Google BigQuery, and some of the team that I work with, we kind of onboard data for customers. We use things like Google Cloud Dataprep for some work around that. In my off time, I love playing around with data, so I'm a bit of a sort of data geek. I also do a kind of a podcast as well. So I do a podcast on kind of analytics and the BI and the big data industry. I've got a Medium blog there, and I live down by. Okay, so that's my sort of background. I'll try one more time with this, and if it's not going to work, then it's. Why is it doing that? Okay, right. So, as well as working with data every day, I also like cycling. So, cycling is my kind of hobby out of work, and like a lot of kind of techies, I suppose. Really, when we do cycling, we use things like Strava, or we capture all the data using kind of bike computers and so on. So how many of you use Strava at all? So I mean, Strava is fantastic, and what coupled with some of the bike computers you can get now. So I've got like a Hammerhead Karoo, I've got a Wahoo kind of bike computer as well. What I do is I capture all the data as I'm doing it, and typically analyze it from within sort of Strava. And so things I would look at is things like cadence and looking at sort of like particular segments, seeing how that kind of like my performance going with that. And as you can see, I'm not exactly an athlete, but it's interesting kind of doing it and playing around with the data and so on. So I use things like VeloViewer to sort of visualize the data, but and so it's kind of interesting, and it makes using the bike kind of interesting, and it corresponds with my sort of data interests. Definitely hanging, isn't it? Right. It's a shame because there's some animation things I don't want to use. So one last time. Hang on. Please. I think it's the memory taken up by Zoom. Okay, never mind. Okay, so as well as using, so I'll leave that now. So as well as using, bike computers and Strava and so on, I've basically all these items here. I've got these at home, so I'm a bit of a kind of like a smart gadgets kind of person. So what I do is I've got like a Wi-Fi scales. I've got actually last week I got a set of I got one of those thermos smart connected kind of water bottles, which then connects to Fitbit, so you can measure how much you're drinking. I've got the Apple Watch and all these kind of things here. And so all these items that I've got, they all, first my wife thinks it's crazy, so I have to kind of sneak the things in the house now without kind of realising. But they're all connected, they all provide data, and they all kind of connect together, and they connect via things like Fitbit, or they connect via IOT. But the idea with all this, what I was playing around with, was trying to get this kind of complete data picture of stuff that I do. Okay. So all these things here I've actually kind of got, and they all provide data. So let's go here. Let's hit it down there. Okay. So as you probably know, you can go and you can download data from Strava. So as well as kind of analysing it within the Strava app, you can go to their website and you can download your complete data archive. There's what are called TCX files, which is a JSON file that's got all of the sort of waypoints in there. Or you can use things like IFTTT or various kind of things as an API as well that you can use. And a while ago, I wrote an article, for example, for Oracle at the time, on taking that data set on its own and then kind of analysing it using their kind of data visualization tool. So, and that's kind of interesting. You can look at that data in isolation there. But as you'll see in this presentation, the point of it was, wouldn't it be interesting if we can combine that with other data you've got as well? Okay, so that's all kind of stuff I've done in the past with their data. But as well as all that, we've got data coming in from, say, Fitbit, data coming in from other kind of things that I own as well. And one of the things I do with that is I put that into a tool called Looker. So has anybody here used Looker at all or heard of Looker as a sort of BI tool? Yeah, so Looker is interesting in that it's, for us, the reason we use it at Qubit is that it connects directly to BigQuery, so it's a really nice tool for doing that. So I've got a kind of a partner instance of Looker, so I can use it all the time for my own stuff. And so I've been building out sort of various kind of, I suppose, visualizations in there and doing stuff with that. But all these things in isolation are good. One other thing I've got is on your mobile phone, you typically, if you use Google Maps, and it's tracking your location all the time. So you can use things like Google Takeout to export your data from there. So, what if I could combine this all together and actually kind of visualize it as one thing and try and connect, for example, my cycling data to my weight data to see whether or not sort of the fact that we had a bad winter this year was the reason you might put on weight, you've not done as much kind of cycling, bringing in, say, weather data and so on. So what if we combine this together? And so really kind of what was the driver for this, really? I mean, that's not me there, but the driver for this was that inexplicably, I put on weight this kind of winter, and I was thinking, that's kind of strange, because the last couple of years I managed to keep it off, and it was cracking back on again. And my theory is because the winter was so bad that we didn't get out as much, and therefore not as much exercise and so on. But I'm kind of interested to see whether that was the reason, or maybe it's I've eaten too much or whatever. And so that was one of the drivers for this exercise. But also, I'm one of those obsessive kind of, watchers of YouTube videos about how to kind of get up hills faster and all that kind of stuff. And, oh, here we go. That's Keynote there. Do you know what I think it was? I think it was that thing where it maybe kind of, it's trying to down, the iCloud, it kind of persists to the cloud and it takes a while to upload. I think it maybe was that. So, right, here we go. That's better. That's better. And now the slides are all finished, actually, as ironically. But, anyway. So, I set myself this kind of idea then of trying to use Cloud Dataprep to be this kind of data blending and data preparation tool. So it's, right, okay, it's come up because it's down on the bottom screen. And so the reason I wanted to use Cloud Dataprep was for a number of reasons. So I've got quite a background in things like ETL tools and very formal kind of data modeling, but that takes a while to do, and it's very much kind of a lot of ceremony around defining kind of your mappings and all that sort of thing. And what I liked, right, here we go. What I liked about Cloud Dataprep is that you can do this very visual kind of blending of data, preparing it and that sort of thing. but particularly with health data. So if you're looking at data from things like kind of Fitbit data, where you might only weigh yourself every so often. The classic thing is if you try to look at maybe your change of weight week on week or day on day, you may not have a reading every day. And so there's all things you have to do, for example, where you have to fill in values, we're missing values and stuff like that. And so there's a lot of stuff really where a data prep tool can be quite useful. So
you were running out of battery.
Was that maybe it as well? Right, okay, here we go. So let's go over here. Right, try one more time. Didn't work. So we've been using cloud data prep at work, and I thought, let's give this a go for this project. Really, okay, so my own thing here. So, okay, let's look at this. Here we go. So let me take you through how I did it. So we're going to Chrome here. Okay, so this is Cloud Data Prep here. And I guess probably all of you are fairly new to the product. So these things on the, these things listed out there, they're what are called flows. So a flow is in like an ETL, you use an ETL tool in parts of Informatica or something. So a flow is like a kind of like a process or like something where you'd have multiple steps in there and you're going to do transformations on one and so on, and they go in a sequence, okay? So if I go to this one here, this is the overall flow that I've used to build up this stuff that I'm doing here. So, and you have data sets in your jobs, okay? So data sets in cloud data prep terms are either, files sitting in Google Cloud storage, or they're tables in BigQuery, okay? So, and you know, Olivier later on will be talking about, you know, the wider kind of Trifacta product and connect more. But the thing that, again, the thing that was particularly interesting about cloud data prep for me was the fact that it connected natively to BigQuery. There aren't many ETL tools that sort of do that, really. So that's quite interesting. So if I open this up, so there's kind of multiple steps to this. And what I'll do is I'll work from the left-hand side and try and explain to you what transformations were done at each stage and why this tool was particularly kind of easy at doing that. So the data sources I've got coming in here is, the first one is I've got what in kind of data warehousing terms would be like a time dimension. So it's a table that's got one row per 5 minutes in there. So basically going from like 2016 or whatever, it's got one row in there for every kind of 5 minutes. And the reason for that is I can then join that to everything else to try and then get some common sort of like grain to all the kind of the sources I've got. The idea being that every 5 minutes I'm going to go and work out where I am, what exercise I did during that period, you know, what my heartbeat was and that sort of thing. So by having this kind of like single time dimension, I can then sort of left out to join that to everything else to try and get everything to commonly join on that sort of 5 minute thing there. So what I've also got here, I'll open up this one here. So this is called, I think, a wrangle here. It's a wrangle, it's called. Or a recipe, there we go. And so what these are here is, when you have your source coming in, if you want to start transforming it, you create what's called a recipe there. And then if I click on this, it brings up a kind of spreadsheet style interface where I can do these, like all tricks and so on, these kind of fairly lightweight transformations of the data to do things like splitting it and so on. Okay? And so that's opening up now. So you start off with one single data source, but then you can start to join things together. You can union things in there and so on. You can do like window functions and that sort of thing. So this is kind of loading up now. It's all done in the browser. There's no kind of desktop source download. So that's kind of loading up now. So the first thing I want to do is, if you go to Google Apps, you can go and download all your data through what's called Google Takeout. And so what I had from that was my locations everywhere I've been, like the last 10 years. So when your phone sort of tracks where you are, so I went and downloaded that and then went to combine that with that time dimension. Okay, so if I go and click on here, I'll just show you this, for example, and then click on this. These, what we should have in here, here we go. So what I've done there is I've got the time dimension coming in there, and one of the steps I'll show you in a second is I've joined in this data from Google locations. Okay, it's quite scary in a way what you realise what you're tracking and giving away. So I've got down to kind of fairly sort of fine granularity wherever I've been for the last 10 years. It's quite handy if you've lost your keys or something. But if you've actually done a crime, then you're stuffed really. So that's all in there. And so what I'm trying to do here is build up this kind of like 5-minute granularity on it. Okay? And what I've also got there is I've got, so I use these what were withing scales and they're Nokia health scales. So I've got my weight going back to about sort of 5 or 6 years ago as well. And so what I've got on there is, now obviously my weight's not going to change from 5 minutes to 5 minutes. But I'm just trying to get these things to join together in this 5-minute kind of sort of grain for everything. So let me show you the steps in the kind of recipe here. So these are all the things that I've done here, and each one of these represents a step in the transformation. So if I wanted to, for example, maybe kind of truncate the latitude and longitude coordinates there to say a common, say, 5 digits after decimal place, what I can do there is go and just kind of draw this over there, and that then comes up with a series of kind of suggestions for things that you might want to do with the data, and that's kind of really handy because typically it's things like maybe truncated to 5 digits. It might be, for example, to take not just those numbers, but the pattern that describes those. So digit, digit, kind of dot, dot, whatever. Or things like, replace or count values. And so they're fairly good. Typically it will suggest something that if it isn't exactly what you want to do, if you then click on the see all bit here, then one of those suggestions will be what you want. If not, you can go and type in, for example, a formula or something. And so you end up building up these step-by-step transformations here. And so in this case here, this first step is kind of bringing in the weight data, bringing in the location data, but then, where are we here? This bit here, this transformation, where it says fill if missing. So, for example, when we look at weight again, I don't weigh myself every 5 minutes. I weigh myself typically once a day or once every 2 or 3 days. And so you can say, with weight, for example, if there's a missing row of data in there, then you can go and say clean missing, and you can say fill down the last available value, or a kind of like an average. So if it's something like cycle workouts, then you can't just assume that I've done one every day. So you can't fill that with the last value. But for things like your weight, well, that obviously the last value is the last one you want. So you end up building this up here. So what I did then was go into here. So step by step by step, I built this thing up. So the more that it becomes a step by step, I suppose, kind of flow, the more that it's like an ETL tool. And one of the things that surprised me was the degree to which I could build up a fairly kind of complex data loading kind of routine here, sort of visually. And I'm used to, I'm used to working on big ETL projects where it's like dozens of people in there, 1,000 pound data, that sort of thing. And it kind of like, it surprised me what you can do this way. So I went along here. There's the location data. I also brought in weighings there. Then I brought in stuff from, so I've got the Fitbit, these Fitbits here as well. And what it does there is it measures, for certain, it also detects the workout type you're doing. So if you're walking, it detects that. If you're biking, it detects your biking and so on. And so what you have then is, well, you have activities, here it is here. So what you have then is a bunch of, you've got, for example, an activity type in the table, and you've got some measurements like calories burned and so on. So what I wanted to do there was to, where are we here? Was to pivot that. Let's go and find that. So that's it there, health tracker there. I wanted to select a couple of those types of activity and then pivot it so that it kind of like made columns for cycle things and steps and so on, really. Okay. And the end goal of all this is to put it into this tool called Lookup and then visualize it. Okay. So this was quite a nice thing here where what I did was I basically truncated the times so that so every kind of workout will be at different points in the 5 minutes. So for some of them, I basically rounded it up to the nearest 5 minutes. So I divided the time in milliseconds by 36,000 and then modded it on that sort of thing. Or I might just have gone and just sort of like truncated it to start the day. But again, these are all things I can just do visually by going in there and, you know, for example, just selecting the first part of the date, then kind of like appending the noughts at the end of it and that sort of thing. But this, I mean, to be honest, this took like about 3 evenings in my spare time to do this. So it wasn't a kind of massive thing to do. That's in there. So there's a whole series in there, and so the truncate thing should be in here. Pivot, here we go. So this was the pivot bit where it basically aggregates it on a column type and so on. So, you know, that's it there. Have a look, pivot, so you can just go and edit that there, and so on. And this is all done in my spare time as well. So, I mean, nobody really plays with ETL tools in their spare time, you know. But this was kind of, I suppose, the thing about this was it was sufficiently visual and interactive that it didn't seem like a chore when I was doing it. So that's all pivoted on now. So there's quite a few things so far. What we get to at the end of it, I'll show you the kind of end point on this. So what we get to at the end of that is 2 data sets that I've got, where the first one is where I've taken these 5-minute intervals and I've gone and then left out a join to that. First of all, my map locations, then all the activities I've done, including cycling ones, things like my heart rate, weight, and all that sort of stuff. And so that gives me a data set that starts at 2 years ago. The grain is every 5 minutes, and it's got everything I've done during that period. And actually, one thing I've done in the past is also then brought in things like emails and stuff like that, and you can use what's kind of nested columns in there and so on. But on this bit here, I've focused on the health stuff. But what I've also done is I've got an export of my Strava data from the Strava kind of API. And then what I've done then is for each of the activities that I've done, I've got the date of that and then appended all of my other kind of stat stuff to it as well, like my weight, how much sleep I had the previous night, what the weather was like, and all that sort of stuff. To try and then kind of work out, well, you know, how much does getting an early night on Saturday night affect the speed at which you're cycling on a Sunday? Because I typically go out on Sunday to do that. And trying to work out again whether, trying to convince myself to get an early night basically sometimes. And that will be kind of what it's all about. So you end up then with this, I'll show you here. So this is the Strava one here. And I'll show you in here, I'll show you in BigQuery afterwards. The other thing with this is it's dead cheap to use because all you pay for currently under beta, it's like a beta project from kind of Google and Trifacta. All you pay for is the processing cost of cloud data flow in the background. So really, if you're using the same sort of size of data set that I use, it's basically free, which is kind of good. Any kind of tool to play around with in your spare time, it's free. It's good. I don't want a bigger scale, obviously you pay more for it, but that's loading up there. And what I'll do as well, I'll load up BigQuery on here and show you on here. That's kind of loading up.
Can I ask you, how large was that data set?
Well, the bit that made it really big was that 5 minutes interval across kind of like 2 years. So that meant there were a lot of rows in there. In terms of data sets I've used other than this, so in qubit sense, I've used data sets that are literally kind of like multi kind of 100 terabytes in size. And so really what's I suppose the scale of it is then given by the Google kind of platform when you have using BigQuery and so on. But this data set here, it's not tiny, but it's not kind of, you know, Google scale sort of thing. But so that's it's still loading up. So at the end of this process, what I end up there is with 2 tables of data. So that's kind of still loading up. There we go. So this is the final prepped and wrangled kind of data set. And so I've got, this is the Strava one. So I've got my normal Strava data of what are called activities. So each time you kind of, you know, record a bike ride, that's an activity. Live down in Brighton, so a lot of these are kind of, you know, cycling to here and back and so on. And what I've got in there is I first of all bucketed the data. So I put everything into these 5 minute intervals, and that was just done by taking the Unix timestamp, you know, dividing it by a certain number, then modding it and so on. I've also brought in the, where are we? We have along here things like the weather. So I get the weather from Weather Underground using IFTTT. I've got weight, I've got all that kind of stuff in there coming in, okay? And that's all been step by step kind of added into this using kind of Dataprep. That's all coming in here. I'll show it to you in BigQuery. There we go. So I end up really with these two tables. So this is the kind of the 5-minute Fitbit one, first of all. So there it is there. So we've got these buckets in there, and it basically writes it all back to BigQuery at the end. If you're using something like Oracle or MySQL or whatever, then you can output to CSV, and then you can get it off Google Cloud Storage and put it into there if you want to. But I tend to use BigQuery for my stuff now. That's all in here. And then I've got, if I go to the end of here, this is where, hopefully there's some data in there. Where's it gone? Hopefully it's in there somewhere. Where are we? I'll show you to look at it. And then down here, this is the Strava data. Okay, and go into this. Right, there we go. So last, and you can see now all of the additional data I've brought in here. Okay, so hours of sleep, fat mass, weight, weather condition, all that kind of stuff there. Okay, so that's all that's been done using this tool. And then to visualize it, what I do then is I use Looker to do that. So let's go in here and show you that. And so Looker connects directly to BigQuery in this case. And then, did any of you use Looker at all? You've seen that? So Looker's kind of interesting in that. Have any of you used BI tools in the past, like kind of business objects? Or yeah, right. So you know the idea of a kind of like a semantic layout, so the business object universe. So Looker uses a similar sort of thing, but you define it using this kind of markup language. So all the kind of metadata modeling is done. First of all, it's the first of these tools that I've seen that has a concept of a semantic layout. It's kind of, it's a big data tool. But you go in there and you define this model against these tables and so on there. Going into the examples I've got here, I think under here, hopefully, show a couple of reports that I've got. So the first report, where are we? And it's shared. It's looks. Right, okay, then share, cycling by Google. Let's look here. So I saved it earlier on. Weight affected by cycling. I think that was it, one here actually. It was quite nice. It actually proved my theory, which was kind of good, really. Which was, after having spent all that time building it, it was quite nice that my theory. I actually spent 9 months for building this kind of data model before that was all about working out what was the biggest influence on that sort of thing. It turned out to be sleep. And ironically, I spent so many hours building this stuff. Should have got, you know, in the end, it was actually sleep was the thing. But so actually, this was interesting. It did prove my theory, actually. So it's kind of convenient that it did, which was, obviously, most of you probably live in the UK. The weather, the winter was terrible this year. It was really, really cold. Down in Brighton, it's all kind of like pretty low. So the red bit there is weight. And so as my, just about to see that, as my cycling sort of fell away, my weight was kind of going up slightly, sort of thing, you know. So it kind of proved my theory a little bit. It wasn't me in my eating during the year. It was the fact that the weather was bad, you know. So that's my story anyway.
So when you say proving it, you're just looking visually and saying that it's like.
Do you know what? There's not a huge amount of looking at this really. I mean, I was only finished it at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Okay. But the point is, what I've got here is I've got these, you know, rows of that. I've got all the workouts I've done, and I've got how my weight was. So, for example, yeah, the thing about when you first start the cycle is that you'll usually get heavier, and so it's harder then, isn't it? The more you cycle, the more weight you lose, and the easier it gets to cycle then. So, but what you've got is for every single kind of cycle ride I've taken, it's got all of my kind of vital statistics, plus what the weather was like at the time, what the wind direction was, and all that kind of stuff. And so you can hopefully see that your things like your speed, your cadence, and so on goes up as your weight goes down, and all that. You know. And the other bit really was a general thing every 5 minutes, trying to work out what you're doing and so on. One of the things about the data you can download from Strava is certainly the stuff that I've seen, it doesn't really give you, it tells you when you started, and it tells you your starting latitude and longitude. It doesn't tell you then for each of what they call segments, what time each one started and where you were at the time. And so one thing I did as well with this data was I used my Google kind of like locations data to overlay onto it now. So I could look at a cycling workout and actually work out where I was during that. But also, because with Apple Watch, you've got your heartbeat recorded on there as well. I was able to look at how my heart rate was affected by the hills and that sort of thing. So I cycled the some of the South Downs Way, sort of like over the back in May, I think. And I was able to track on there through kind of using this tool. And so I was able to track how, so along here, this is the looker report here. So this is overlaying my cycle route, the kind of the Strava data there, and also these are my kind of heart rate readings as well. So going down into here, clicking on this, so it's about 109 BPM there. So I think what that was, I don't know if any of you know Brighton at all, but there's a particular stretch from Storrington down to Shoreham, where it's just like sort of like dual carriage motorway sort of thing. I'm cycling along there really fast, trying to catch up with trying to sort of not get run over. And I think that's probably why my heart rate was so high down there. Probably I was going to get hit by a truck or something. But then you can see it from there. And I guess the whole point of this story really is, first of all, it's using data that's interesting to yourself. So nobody's really going to go home and play the ETL tool to kind of learn it and all that. But when it's your own data, that's interesting. And you've got all these different data sources that you can use, but often they're all kind of silos and so on. And the effort involved in using a tool like Informatica or something to integrate these, you just don't bother really. But with this tool, especially the fact that the way it's offered is virtually, effectively free for personal use. It's not technically, but that's effectively it is. It means you can start to do these kind of projects. And other stuff I do, I had a kind of brief moment of fame a couple of years ago when I got on the national press because I had this thing where I had a Wi-Fi kettle that I was trying to connect to those days to Alexa, where it wasn't kind of done. It wasn't a pre-built integration at that point. So I had a Hadoop cluster in my garage, literally in my garage there, and all these kind of data sources coming in. And I had that. My wife was away for 2 days, and she said to me, "On the way, make sure the kitchen's clean and make sure you don't post anything stupid on the internet." And so this kettle I've got, it kind of every so often it would disconnect from the network and all this. And I had to use a sort of packet sniffer type thing to try and find where its doing my IP address was. And so I posted this on the internet at the time, and it kind of, I started to build a following during the day, which was slightly worrying. When you become a Twitter moment halfway through the day, that's usually, it's not typically a good sign, and so I was that guy on there. So so everything in the house is all connected as well, all data coming in. And I suppose going back to the Trifacta thing, this is a perfect tool for starting to blend that data in and so on as well, really. So that's what I do all the time. That's what I do in my spare time. And I do it during the day for a living, and I do it in the evenings for out of interest, really. But it's how I got a little bit fitter, really, because I think having kind of like things like bike computers and so on with data coming out of them, that was enough of an incentive to start kind of getting on the bike and doing stuff with it, really. So sorry about the keynote sort of problems there, but that's the story of how I've been using the product and playing around with it. And we actually use it in work as well as kind of stuff. So any questions or kind of thoughts really on that? I mean, anyone else play around with data in the evenings and do stuff with it? Or are you all kind of not sad?
I'm trying to help a friend work out what's triggering her migraine. So I've got her every day.
Yeah.
Putting down a scale for every normal triggers like caffeine intake, sleep, exercise, changing routine, stress, and these sort of things.
Yeah.
I've only just started that. But it does come on to one of the so there's visualizing the data and trying to sort of see whether there's a trend, and then there's like that sort of regression analysis sort of proving mathematically that are there any tools that you use for the latter?
Yeah, I mean, I used so a couple of years ago I had this project where I was trying to work out what was the biggest determinant of my weight gain and weight loss. So, and I did like a logistic regression type thing, just using using Python, using pandas and so on there. So I just use simple tools like that, really. And what I find now is a lot of the data viz tools now, like kind of Tableau and so on, they have some built-in functions for doing like logistic regression and stuff like that. The danger, I mean, one of the dangers of all that thing is a little knowledge can be dangerous sometimes, and it's very easy. Remember once I presented on this and I said, the reason why this is the case is this. And I realised my numbers were upside down. And actually what it was showing on the screen was completely opposite of what I was out of it. So I think, back to your question, I would use simple tools like kind of pandas and so on to do that. But it's I guess it's a good way of learning this stuff as well. One of the things I've been doing as well is my son, I've got a teenage son, he's 16, never goes to bed. Right? So I've been trying to work out how I can use the hue lights in his bedroom to try and get him to go to bed early. So I've been doing little kind of experiments where I would lower the lights at a certain time, I would do. He's got 3 hue lights in his room, and so I've been doing things where because.
Does he know?
No, he doesn't know. He doesn't know. So I've been turning his heating down as well. So we've got his heating room there. So I've been turning his heating down and changing his lights and changing the hue of his lights to try and get him to go to bed a bit earlier. Because I got some of that ideas from some of the data science work I've been doing in the past, but also Qubit do a lot of kind of A/B testing stuff. So I've been looking at different things for that as well. But it's been interesting trying to get him to go to bed a bit earlier. And things where one thing I tried was it just starts lowering his lights, at 12 o'clock. So it just lowers and lowers and lowers. Seeing that works. So then he comes down annoyed then. So there's that kind of how far you can push it with that. But it's again, that's how I learned pandas, for example, doing that kind of stuff. Really.
Have you tried changing the temperature of the lights?
Yeah, there's all that kind of. So I've been doing that. The other thing I've been doing is again running an experiment on the house where I'm trying to work out. So my wife and the son and the daughter have got these Fitbits on. So I've been doing things like lowering the temperature in the house to see whether it makes them get up and move around a bit more. So, so the whole house is like some kind of Truman Show type sort of thing where I'm just running experiments on the house, but also like just trying to make different sort of variations on it. So changing the lights and changing the heat and all that. Just to see if I can provoke a response out of them. Which if I ever found out, they would go mental because it's like one of those things you just don't want that from, but it's having all the stuff smart in the house and then feeding into a data lake effectively means you can run the experiments.
Just on that, so there's like to do that and work out what's affecting doing an experiment, you want to design an experiment approach.
Yeah.
To that. Then Google wrote a paper a couple of years ago where they made cookies. And then we're doing like an optimization things, what makes the nicest cookie.
Yeah.
So like the computer would say, now do this experiment, now that experiment. So
not so much. No, I mean, I'm aware of those things.
Yeah.
I've been so in that. So I suppose you divided the work I do into kind of data science people, data scientists and data engineers. I'm more the data engineer side, so I would typically build out clusters and stuff that our data scientists would then do those things on. So I'm perfectly aware of those things. And we've been using things like what's the Google thing with there's AutoML, for example, and that sort of thing, where you can. I tend to be able to deploy those things and run them clustered, but I don't profess to be a data scientist on that. But I know enough to sound like I'm talking about, but I don't really. I'm more of a kind of data engineer. Anyone else use this sort of thing at all? So you said you use Strava at all.
Yeah.
So have you been using the data in there, or?
No, not yet.
No.
All I've done was I put my bank statements into Tableau once.
Oh right, yeah, that's really scary, isn't it?
No,
It's for me. It's for me.
I
I again looking at so on that idea, what I've got in here is so under here. So I've got like a personal data lake where all my data in here. And if you go to this bit here, I use Monzo. So Monzo is a good one. So Monzo is a bank that very easy to get hold of data via an API. But I've got that in here, and where are we? So I've got Monzo transactions, First Direct, Amex, and so on. Where are we here? So it might be, that's actually under here. Here we go. Finances. So that's all in here. So that's like First Direct current account, that sort of thing. And that can be quite, especially with Monzo, because Monzo gives you a really rich set of metadata out there. And I wrote an article actually a while ago on this, where you can get things like the merchant. You can get the merchant kind of Foursquare sort of ID, Google Places ID for each one, and you can start to. I've not really got it actually. Let's go into it. Where are we? So here we go. So taking the data from Monzo, and is this like a developer API you can use for this, and working out, like, for example, where you spend your most money, working out where the most expensive coffee was I got around where I work, but also linking it to where are we here? Linking it to things like Google Places and so on, so I can click on it and then bring up the location I spent the money and that sort of thing. But another thing I found quite interesting was to correlate that with things like temperature and so on. So do you spend more money when you're kind of like, when it's really cold outside, hot outside, and all that, and also to see it in aggregate as well, because I rely on that thing, spending it all different places, so I don't ever work out how much I've spent. So that's all in there as well. And that's all using kind of Looker, and actually I use something called Zapier to bring that data in as well. I used this product in the background to blend it all together really. And you can schedule stuff with this as well, so you can run it like a normal ETL routine, where it schedules and runs every night, for example.
How long did it take you to get up to speed with Dataprep?
Not that long actually. So I've used so I used an Oracle Dataprep product, which is nothing near as good as this really. But the basic idea of being able to run things in a spreadsheet style interface, I was aware of that. I mean, not long really. I mean, if you go into here and look at the kind of the recipe thing here, the steps are fairly obvious. If you're used to things like splitting data, transforming it, doing like window functions and so on, it's fairly kind of obvious how it works. I mean, it's fairly visual really. I mean, you go in and you've got, so under new step, there's a bunch of different types of kind of transformation you can do. You can go to here, click on that, and you've got things like format. It's not difficult really. It's aimed, I think, at people who aren't like programmers. It's aimed at analysts, so it's aimed at kind of people who, I suppose, need to track data before they do it. Use it as Tableau or something. It didn't take long really. It's quite straightforward. And so for me, the killer thing was it links into Google Cloud Storage and BigQuery, and that was a real killer sort of feature for me.
One more comment, but one of our sales engineers gave a presentation. His wife has arrhythmia, so it serves health data. He took data from an iWatch and used Trifacta to actually get the data and it's in this ugly JSON format. You get it into a format you could analyze, and then you could actually work with the doctor. There's a presentation on the website sort of explaining how you do that. But
yeah,
health stuff is interesting.
Yeah, so when it runs the transformation data, I'm using Cloud Data Flow. So it works on that kind of scale. With that product in the background. So it scales pretty well, really.
So would it work on what sort of overall stack of layers if someone had a dashboard with Power BI that was using some data that was refreshed every month? I guess you could, the first time round, you do the loop, you do that interactively,
yeah.
But then you leave that in the background and then it's seamless. Does that how that would work?
I think it depends. I guess depending on how it's set up. In terms of like sort of streaming data, so it's just constantly coming in.
Yeah, like monthly data is pressed quite often, once a day, once a week.
Yeah, so
your recipe is okay, then almost it would be like the pipe for everything.
Yeah, so it's not going to process it kind of like as a stream. But if there was new data that lands into a staging area, for example, then, I mean, what you've got in here under jobs. So if I went to go and schedule this, for example, I go in here, click on add schedule, and that then runs, once a night, once a day, or whatever in there.
And then you'd use that data for your source for visualization.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you can take the data that's landed in your data lake, sort of do some work on it, pair it into a sort of format, and then that becomes what you use to load into something Power BI or something. I mean, in this case here, it's going to be this particular product is focused on the Google stack. But if you use the full Trifacta, then it would do that as well. So yeah, it's a simple scheduling really. So yeah.
Cool.
All right. Okay. Thank you.